All right, we're back with Johnny Depp, and the case right now is on break, so we have an opportunity to be able to go over some really interesting stuff. We just had Jesse Weber on, and we're going to have another special guest coming up in a moment. But we want to bring up something that was very interesting that happened last Thursday with regard to one of Depp's witnesses, Gina Deuters. She was in the middle of testifying. She's a friend of his. When all of a sudden the attorneys went to sidebar and they came out, the judge asked the witness a couple of questions with regard to whether she had seen any clips of the trial, and then removed her from the witness stand and struck her testimony, a very unusual occurrence. Let's take a listen to the judge.
Question for you. Have you been watching the trial this past week?
I've seen clips of it online, yeah.
You've been watching, so you have seen parts of this trial?
Yeah.
Okay, and witness testimonies?
Yeah, I've seen clips of...
You've seen everything. Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any follow-up questions?
Ms. Deuters, have you been watching?
It doesn't matter. She's been watching clips of witness testimony. All right. You're excused, ma'am. You can have your excuse.
Okay.
Thank you. I will instruct the jury they'll have to strike the testimony of Ms. Deuters. There's a rule on witnesses, Mr. Moniz.
Understood, Your Honor. This is the first word.
I believe that. I have no doubt in my mind that this is the first you've heard of it. Have a good day, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, if you watch my show, you know when I refer to the Renaissance woman of the Law&Crime Network, you know I'm talking about Angenette Levy, who is at the scene and or in the courtroom and broke a story that when you were there last week, Angenette, with regard to what happened here, as well as the court barring an Eve Barlow, who was kicked out of the courtroom. So take it away. I mean, you broke some news this weekend and got to the bottom line of what happened here, Angenette. What occurred? Because it's so odd.
Yeah, it really is quite odd, especially for somebody who identifies themselves on social media as a journalist. So Eve Barlow is a woman who has arrived, or at least did arrive at the courthouse each day last week with Amber Heard riding in her vehicle. And she was actually seated in the front row that is reserved for members of Amber Heard's legal team. Well, after this whole dust-up with Gina Deuters last week, there was like a commotion in the courtroom, and we really didn't know what was going on because all of the lawyers were up at the bench with Judge Ascarati, and we're all thinking to ourselves, okay, so what is going on here? Well, it turns out that the reason that the judge even asked Gina Deuters about whether or not she had been watching the trial was because Eve Barlow, according to what we've learned from both a hearing that occurred on Friday when cameras were not in the courtroom, but also from an order that the judge issued, Eve Barlow actually was in the courtroom on her cell phone. She was tweeting and she was texting, and she apparently handed her cell phone to Amber Heard's lawyer while Gina Deuters was on the stand. And we've learned from that hearing that occurred without cameras on Friday of last week that she passed her phone to the lawyer, Ben Rottenborn, who then approached the judge, showed them an Instagram post that belonged to Gina Deuters in which she was discussing the trial and opining on the trial. And that is what prompted the judge to question Gina Deuters outside the presence of the jury. And you saw that she answered that, yes, she had indeed seen some clips of the testimony online. Well, the problem with all of this is that that Instagram post that prompted the judge to question Gina Deuters was not from this week and not from this trial. It was from January of 2021. And Gina Deuters had posted about the libel case that was going on in England at that time. So the attorney, Ben Rottenborn, had represented this. We don't know if it was any fault of his own or if he was presented this information and it was misrepresented to him, but he presented this to the judge as being from this trial. Guess what? It wasn't. It was over a year old. So Ben Chu, the attorney for Johnny Depp, brings this up during this hearing on Friday. The judge is livid because Eve Barlow was not even supposed to be on her cell phone. The only people in that courtroom who can be on their electronics, have a laptop, a cell phone, anything, are the legal team, members of the legal team, lawyers. She is not. And after this whole thing happened with Gina Deuters being, kicked out of the courtroom, essentially being told, you know, ma'am, you're excused. Your testimony will be stricken from the record. Eve Barlow and another woman were told to move to the back of the courtroom, out of that front row, as were members of Johnny Depp's family and his team, who were sitting in that front row reserved only for lawyers and members of the legal team. All of those people were told to move back. Well, guess who's sitting right behind me, Bob? I have no idea who this woman is. It's this Eve Barlow. I see her sitting there, and she's got her cell phone out. So a short time passes, the testimony resumes, they start playing Dr. Kipper's videotape testimony, and I hear a bit of a commotion. I look back, there's a deputy behind me approaching her, and she's got her cell phone out. The deputy takes her out of the courtroom, 2 other deputies are with him, then, you know, whatever happens out in the hallway. She comes back in a short time later, she sits again on the bench behind me, she yet again then has her cell phone out. I have no idea what was going on or what was happening, but this woman was not supposed to have a cell phone. So Judge Ascarati during this hearing on Friday was livid when she found out that this woman had been tweeting from the courtroom and texting from the courtroom. Also livid about this whole, you know, more than a year-old Instagram post. The judge didn't have any idea about Instagram. She doesn't know anything about it. It being presented to her and misrepresented to her by the attorneys. So it was crazy. Eve Barlow was then barred from the courtroom. We first told you about that on Friday, that she has been banned for the remainder of the trial from the courtroom. We started doing some digging. We started looking around, trying to find out why. Nobody would tell us. Well, then on Saturday morning, I found out. This is why. And so if you're a member of the general public or a reporter or anyone, this is the only thing you can have, right? This is how I'm reporting on this case. I had to go and buy this last week. I can't tell you the last time I took notes in a criminal trial or anything. I usually have a laptop. I'm now using this notebook. So that is why Eve Barlow was barred from the courtroom. The judge very, very unhappy in finding out that her orders had been violated.
Well, a great scoop that you got there, Angenette, for sure. But I want to go down to some basics here. Gina Deuters was in the middle of testifying here. She's thrown off unceremoniously in front of the jury. Her testimony is stricken. It turns out that, to your point, that this Ms. Barlow woman had given the lawyers this information that was from a year ago. It is true that Deuters did say that she was looking at the clips of this trial, so that's the judge wanted to end it. My experience has been in situations like this, Angenette, that the judge goes through a much more exhaustive questioning of these witnesses because, in essence, Johnny Depp was deprived of a crucial witness in this case. So my questions to you, Angenette, first of all, was there an order of the court that none of the witnesses could look at any of the trial? Was this communicated to the witnesses by the court directly? Was it the responsibility of the lawyers to do it? And I hate to keep piling on with questions, but my last one is, couldn't there have been of a less obtrusive thing where the judge said the testimony will stand, but ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you can assess her credibility and take it against her that she violated a court order, assuming, Angenette, there isn't even one there. Talk to me about all this.
Well, you know, I think we were all surprised at how quickly that happened because there wasn't more questioning as to whether or not she had watched these clips intentionally, whether she had come across them, whether they were snippets, you know, what have you. But the witnesses in this case are not supposed to be watching the testimony. There is a sequestration order, meaning they're not supposed to be sitting in the trial. And we saw last week when Isaac Baruch, you know, people loved his testimony. They didn't know if he would be recalled or not, and he may be recalled. So then he was going to sit down in the gallery. He left the courtroom because he may be recalled again, either by Johnny Depp's side, who knows, maybe Amber Heard's side calls him during their case. We just don't know who might recall him, but it sounds like Depp's team could possibly do that. So he wasn't allowed in. So this was very clear. It sounds like this had been made clear to these witnesses that they shouldn't be watching any of the testimony or any of the trial online. I was a little surprised that the judge didn't ask more questions regarding how much she had seen, how she had come to see it, things of that nature. But it was interesting during that hearing that took place on Friday, Ben Chu, the lawyer for Johnny Depp, said that she was properly excluded. So it leads me to believe that they did some digging and maybe some questioning of her and found out that maybe she had seen seen more of the trial than she really should have, more than just like an innocent thing where you come across something online and then you shut down the laptop.
Yeah, it certainly would be something that I think there'd be a record on, because this is going to be an issue on appeal, irrespective of what happens on this case, because and the judge's responsibility is to make sure that record is clear. Again, I think, Angenette, there could have been an alternative solution the judge may have been able to accommodate here, but the judge controls the courtroom. Angenette, Renaissance lady here at the Law and Crime Network, you're doing a great job reporting at the scene, and of course, the scoop that you got over the weekend. Thank you so much, Angenette. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
You got it. Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back on the other end. Hopefully, they're going to be resuming with this, obviously fascinating case, not only factually, but the dynamics that are going inside the courtroom. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.